You certainly did galvanise everyone. Dane Vincent, who obviously you would have worked with, the PR man at the club, and Ralph, very good guys. Dane's a good guy. I took him. He worked for me. I took him from Notts to work for me. So he's a good lad. And that campaign really seemed to galvanise things. Everyone did get it going. 6 wins in 9 games. Unbelievable, really. We're all off to the last game at Oldham, aren't we? You know, it's all resting on that one. What were those days leading up to that Oldham game like for you? First time as a manager. This is your boyhood club. It's all on the line. 90 minutes. What were you like that week? How did you cope with it all?
Well, for the past part of 6 weeks, we're an incredible run of form. So I always tried to partition the season into groups of games, into clusters. And I was talking to the lads about, you know, pockets of 4 games. Just concentrate on 4 games. Forget about what's happening in the past or what's happening in the future. Let's just take place of how many points we can get over this period of 4. And thankfully, it took us into that last game of the season. So we were going there full of confidence. And there was, again, everybody that didn't play a part in the Great Escape in the last week, I couldn't have them anywhere near me. So they were kind of like training at different times, and we just trained together, and we were so tight as a group of players and staff that we just knew we were going to Oldham and we were going to come back with, you know, with the points. We just knew it. We just knew that was going to be the outcome. But what happened was, on the Friday night, we was in this hotel over there, and we always got the local paper. There's always a local paper there, isn't there? You know. Yeah. And Lee Johnson had, the older manager at the time, had wrote a piece saying, "I don't care about Notts County. They was on a good run of form as well. All I care about is Oldham. And if we relegate Notts County, I don't care about that." And I took umbrage to that. So what I've done, I got the paper and I told Pilks to go and get it photocopied 50 times. And we put it around the dressing room. Yeah. And I actually didn't say a word to the team before the game. I just didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. They just looked at this dressing room. We got it all kind of... the Pilks was brilliant. He got it all put up before we arrived. And the lads walked in and they looked at it and they just knew it was their moment. And it was some big performances on the day. It was a great moment.
Brilliant, because I think at one point results weren't going quite right, and Alan, and we got a penalty, didn't we? And kind of that, at that moment in time, that penalty was absolutely pivotal, absolutely, because we're all in the away end. I was in the away end with my lad and everyone else, thousands of us. Sheehan gets the ball, doesn't he? Gets the ball. And I did fancy him, to be fair. I'll tell you a little story about Alan in a minute. I did fancy him. He was a strong character, wasn't he?
Brilliant character. Brilliant. And do you know what? Alan was the kind of guy who I could see that he would challenge different managers because of his personality. He would, you know, some of the actions that Alan, gave at, perhaps not just on the pitch, but off the pitch, you know, was a big, big, strong personality. But I quite like them. I quite like them characters around me, you know, because I think if you can focus them, you can really, they can be the defining features in that group. And he was. So people talk about how good Jack was and, you know, and all the other players. But for me, Alan was the best leader at that moment in time. He led the players every single day. And he took his game onto a different level at that time.
And I remember it now, behind the goal with a penalty. You can't, because there's so much riding, you can't be 100% sure, but he was absolutely the player you wanted with that spot kick because the way he strikes a ball, you know.
Yeah, it was. I mean, as soon as we got that penalty, you just knew that he was definitely gonna hit the target. He had such a fantastic strike on him. His set plays delivery was massive for us in the last 9 games as well. We scored a lot of goals from set plays. So, yeah, brilliant. And you just knew, you know, you wanted your leader to take it, didn't you? And he was the leader.
He took it, he scored, full-time whistle blows. mission accomplished. Take yourself back. What did you feel when that whistle blew and you knew the club was safe and wasn't being relegated?
God, I mean, they're moments that never leave you. They're moments of just. I was so proud. I was so proud of everyone. You know, it was an accumulative effort. It wasn't about individuals. It was a group of people who found a way of coming together when there was a lot of friction in and around the football club when I took over. You know, we managed to grab the group, and I mean the group in terms of not the players and not the coaching staff, but the office staff, the fans, the public, everybody to do with Nottingham came together, and we managed to escape, which would have been a disastrous relegation. It would have been disastrous for me personally, because, you know, from a selfish point of view, I didn't want to be the manager that took Notts County into League Two. You know, that would be on my CV forever. So I didn't want that. My mum and dad and my brothers were in the stands. I knew what it meant for them, that they were at the game, and I knew that I was a young manager who had aspirations to progress, and I knew that, and I needed that win so much. But it wasn't about me; it was about us. It really was. I hate that. It sounds a little bit poxy, but it just felt like a massive cloud had been lifted. Yeah. That's what I can only imagine it as, that, because 9 games to go, it was hovering over us, and it just lifted week by week, and it had gone. It had gone at that final kick of the game. It was brilliant.
Marvellous achievement. And so now, still in League One, you're going to plot a course. There were a lot of players left. There was an opportunity for you to bring your own players in and kind of rebuild a squad. Couple of things, which is a personal view. You know, I haven't played the game professionally, so I ain't the expert. You spoke and eulogised about Alan Sheehan. Why did Alan end up leaving and not signing a new contract?
Yeah, well, this is where things changed, as it often does in football. So we had Liddle, Jamal Campbell-Rice, obviously
Sheehan,
Bartosz
Bialkowski.
Yeah. So we had 4, what I thought were top League One players at the time.
Yeah.
I thought they were top draw League One players.
Agreed.
And I wanted to build. I wanted us to go forward that next season with them 4 players at the helm. But because they were higher earners at the football club, I got told that they were leaving, and there was nothing I could do about it. You know, the budget had been cut.
Right. So let's be clear about this, because, you know, if I don't know it, the chances are 95% of Notts fans don't know. So players like Sheehan, Bialkowski, Liddle, Jamal Campbell-Rice, all were out of contract. You would have wanted to keep them all.
Yeah, all of them. Yeah.
But you were told by the club you couldn't keep them, or the only way would be they'd have to take massively reduced terms. Was that kind of the issue?
Yeah, you've nailed it, really. I mean, yeah, of course, the conversation coming out of the football club was that there was going to be a restructure in the budget, which was disappointing, because I felt that we had the ingredients, the raw ingredients, to really move forward. A big football club in Nottingham, a major city, with some good players at the helm. I just felt it needed tweaking. I didn't feel it needed a massive overhaul, because we created a different group over the last 3 or 4 months. Did they get offered new deals? Yes, they did, but they was obviously substantially cut, and they had a decision to make, and I would have made the same decision if I'd have been them. I would have gone somewhere else and wanted.
So I've been in and around football a long time, and I would understand how things would work at certain clubs. So how did those discussions, your retained list, how did they work? Is that you with Jim Rodwell? Is that you and Greg with Jim Rodwell, Ray True, Aileen True? How did that how did those discussions actually take place? And it comes to a point where, because presumably you are saying, I want these players. What's my total budget? How much have I got to spend? If I can keep them, yeah, it's going to be more money, and that might not give me that much for them. Or was it just a case of, that's it? They're going to have to, if they're going to stay, they're going to be on half, 2/3 of their wage. That's it. Boom. What was the process?
Well, the conversation started. If you rewind, I said I didn't want to speak to anything until the last kick was kicked, which was, you know, and that was including the chairman's conversations with me. So we literally left it. We did, and we just let it run its course until the end of Oldham. And then me and Greg, we met the following morning. We went for a walk down the Trent the day after Oldham, and we started plotting what pre-season would look like, what the players would look like, and then obviously you've got to have an important phone conversation later on that day, and it did, and that's when it was kind of told to me that I was not going to have these players, and not only was I not going to have them players, but you know, we were going to have to restructure the group completely because, you know, the budget was dramatically cut, and I had a big decision then. I had a massive,
absolutely.
And I think that would be, if I was to say now, did I make the right call in staying? I think as a 43-year-old, close to a 43-year-old manager, if that was to happen to me now, and I was to encounter that same situation as I did at 35, my conversation would be definitely different to what it was close to 8 years ago. I wouldn't have stayed. I would have left that morning. I would have left and shook hands and wished everybody well, but I didn't. I stayed loyal to the group of players that were going to stay, and I stayed, more importantly, loyal to the staff that I was working alongside. I thought the staff were brilliant. You know, Greg and Pilks and the physios and everyone else that were working so closely with us. I stayed for them, really. I did. And I also stayed because I wanted to manage my football club. Do you know what I mean? If it had been another football club, I would have walked. I didn't, because it was Notts County.
Who told you you can't have them players, the budget's being cut? Was that the chairman? Was that Jim Rodwell?
It would be really wrong of me to just say this one particular person. It was.
Well, who communicated it to you?
Yeah, it was a boardroom discussion, and my closest conversation was always with Jim. I always went to Jim, and then it went into the chairman. You know, it was that relationship. He was the chief executive, so it would have been a conversation. It was 100% a conversation with Jim. And you know what? Jim was disappointed. Jim was disappointed in the conversation. He knew how disappointed I was, and he was disappointed himself because he could see what we'd done over them 6 months. It was a tough conversation for everybody.
It's always very easy with hindsight, isn't it? It's very easy with hindsight. Oh, that's ridiculous. But the way you're explaining the situation, I am genuinely struggling to understand that decision-making process. You know, Alan Sheehan, deadly from set pieces, great delivery of a ball, run through a brick wall, captain. Yeah, Garry Liddle plays 99% of all games every rugby season, no injury worries. Yeah, Bialkowski, youngish good keeper, and how on earth we allowed him to go to Ipswich on a free is beyond me. Because he surely is saleable, you know. Jamel Campbell-Rice gives you, you know, that sort of little bit of spice, creativity in the final third. They were core components of the team. And if you're going to rip those core components, you've got to think, how do I replace them? And that's going to cost me anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where, you know, the next chapter started, because it started off with I'd built up some fantastic relationships with Nottingham Forest, Stuart Pearce in particular. I used to go over and chat with him mainly on a Thursday afternoon. I was trying to bring the clubs closer together. So I knew they had some great young players. And I just thought it would be ideal if we could borrow some of them players to, firstly, help us out. Of course, I knew then that we needed help as a football club. It wasn't a case of my aspirations weren't we were going to get in the top 6 and we were going to get promoted at the end of the season. It was about survival. It was about survival. And what people got carried away with was where we were on the start of January the following year. And it was a nightmare, really, even though it was brilliant.
Yeah, because the other factor of all of this, you were clearly Grealish and McGregor were going to go back to their respective clubs. So you've lost those two little jewels as well. Yeah. So you are now basically having to do a complete
We lost Jimmy Spencer as well. Jimmy Spencer done his cruciate ligament against Arnold. And Jimmy was just a massive player for us at the time. So you've mentioned the 4. You've mentioned the 2 young lads that have gone back to them teams. Throw in Jimmy Spencer as well. And it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare start.
Okay, so you and Greg sit down. Recruitment has probably been one of the single biggest Achilles heels, I would suggest, for Notts for many a year now. A huge amount of transient professional footballers lasting a season. For whatever reason, the club appears to have lost that DNA through the academy and pathway into first teams and all the rest of it. So you sit down with Greg, and how did you go about the recruitment to build your new squad?
Well, it's a restructure. Firstly, you look at what you've got available. We had a number that we were able to work from. Then you've got to prioritise the positions, which we did. We had to. I think we brought in close to. Well, Paul, we brought in too many players.
Yeah.
We brought in too many players.
Yeah.
The overall was massive. It was like people getting to know each other all over again, and it was a nightmare. But that was the situation we was put in, and it was a situation that I'd made my decision to stay.
Yeah.
So I'm staying. I'm in it. It's not like I'm only in it half. I'm in it 100%. So you focus, you refocus, and you start to formulate this new group of players. I was over in Florida in the summer with my family. I was in this gym in Florida, and next to me was Alan Smith. And I was like, "Want to come and play for Notts County, Al?" And he went, "Yeah, I do actually." And that was as far as the conversation went. I went, "All right then, mate." I said, "I'll speak to you when we get back." And he came from MK Dons, and he joined us from a playing, coaching perspective, and he was brilliant to be around. We brought in the likes of Gary Jones, who, honestly, if I was
Warrior.
He was Warrior, but if I was to tell you how much Gary Jones was earning, it'd blow you away, because he wanted to come and play for good people, and I felt that we were decent people at Notts County at the time with the group. And we had to restructure, but within that restructure, we had this brilliant we had this great relationship with Forest, and the Louis Lang, when Louis came over, Louis was excellent for us. Stephen McLaughlin when he came over. Then we had Jake Cassidy, who came as a centre forward, and then Zelly Ishmael from Wolves. So Kevin Thelwell, who was over at Wolves, was brilliant to deal with. He helped us out with the players. Stuart helped us out with the players at Nottingham Forest. And then we started off, and we started creating this kind of like, hang on a minute, what's going off here? We're top end of League One. And then they went again. January arrived and they went again.
Okay, let's just complete the restructuring part of the equation. So one player who I thought was an excellent addition, and I don't know how you got him, but hopefully you can tell us all now, because clearly goalkeepers are massively important. You don't win too many games unless you've got a half-decent goalkeeper. So how did Roy Carroll end up at Notts?
Roy arrived through Alan.
Alan Smith.
So we highlighted that obviously we needed a new number one, and Pilks had his list, and in amongst it was Roy's name, and we just felt that we could entice him there because of the connections that we had. You know, the connections of Alan, the connections of Pilks as well from his Man United days. And we just thought, you know, for him to come back and be a number one would be ideal. And obviously, he came all the way from Greece. He was playing over in
Olympiacos.
And we were like, he's not going to come to Notts County
exactly
on the back of Olympiacos, but he did. And as soon as he came, he was brilliant. The most humble goalkeeper. You know, he was unbelievable. You know, great personality, great goalie. And like I say, we started to reconstruct the group again, and it was difficult. But we got there, and we managed to compete at the top end of the table, which was surprising.
And so we're clear. So the group of players that you've now assembled for that season, substantially lower budget than the previous season, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. You started well. You've kind of surpassed expectations. Third in September after one particular result. You were still 10th in the top 10 when I've just looked through it all before, going into January. Yeah. What happened?
Again, it was, listen, obviously performances and results are, you're always going to be judged on that. I get that. I understand that completely. But the Forest lads went back. We had terrible communications with Wolves at the time. It wasn't Wolves' fault. It was ours. And it was a fact that the loan players that we were so reliant upon weren't our players at all. They were always going to be Forest players and Wolves players. And as soon as they get taken back off you again, you're decimated again, aren't you? So then I thought, right then, where can I go next in terms of my relationships with people who I thought could help us out? And so I went to Derby with Steve McLaren and picked up the phone to Steve and tried to get some of the young players in from Derby. And unfortunately, the guys who came over just weren't ready for first team football. We had like Alifi Santos came over, one or two of the other centre forwards came over who just couldn't play at the level for what we needed. And then you go like that. And then as soon as that happens, it was really difficult. But what I would say is, even though results were poor and clearly performances had dropped, the belief within the group had never ever changed from what I said to the group internally, and I never went to press to say it was, we've got to survive this season again. Because I felt if we could survive that season, I really believe that we could get a stronger budget the next season, because we'd sorted the finances out. The finances were difficult, Paul. And although I wanted the McGregors and the Campbell Rices and the Bialkowskis, I wanted them. I got it. I understood it, why we couldn't have it, because, the club was in a mess financially, and, the owners were troubled in terms of the financial situation. So I thought, can we just buy a year? Can we get through a year and then we can push on again in that third year? But it didn't happen. And with 9 games to go, I think it was with 9 games to go, obviously I got the call after the MK Dons loss away at MK Dons. Got the call to go back to Nottingham on the Monday morning and was sacked.
Who communicated that to you? Was that dealing with Jim again, or was that with the owner?
No, Jim had left on the Tuesday. He'd left before the MK Dons game. He'd gone to took the Scunthorpe role. And mine and Jim's relationship was good all the way through. It was honest. He told me how it was, and I think, although I was disappointed with a lot of what he was saying, it was through honesty, and I appreciated that. And then Aileen for that week took over as chief executive.
Yeah,
and it was just a chaotic week. Chaos. arguments left, right and centre, which sometimes happens. And then you go away to MK Dons, and I think we were 2-1 down in the 90th minute. Ended up losing 4-1 because he scored 2 late goals. And then my phone went late on Saturday night, and she said, listen, Shaun, I think you need to come in. No, she didn't say that, actually. She said to me, Shaun, listen, you know, we've made a decision. I said, listen, you're not gonna tell me over the phone. You're gonna tell me in person. If you're the chief executive and you've got this role now, which is what you've wanted, you tell me in person and you tell my staff. And we went up to Meadow Lane on Monday morning, and she told me and Greg in the office, and I had my say, and respectfully shook her hand, and we then got into the car and went up into Arnold, up to the training ground at Arnold Town, and we saw the players and told them, and it was difficult. It was a lot of tears. We had a good group. Some good people, some really, really good people, and it was a shame how it ended.
You spoke earlier about, you know, you're a manager, not a coach, head coach, and I totally understand. And the successful people that I've worked alongside would all fit absolutely. You know, Martin O'Neill, Mickey Adams, Dave Bassett. You know, they are all managers of men. One person whose name's not been mentioned, but I know a lot of Notts fans have some views on it, would be that there was Guy Branston as well, was involved kind of in this equation. Was he actively involved with player recruitment at that point, or was that solely down to you and Greg?
Well, it got to the point where we wanted a head of recruitment. We felt that me and Greg doing that, you know, over the past year was difficult because we were trying to manage the club, you know, trying to manage the team. But the players that came in were from our communications with the clubs that we were dealing with, up until a point where, and this is the one time where I did fall out with Jim, you know, I spoke to Jim and I wanted my own head of recruitment.
Yeah.
Say my own. I felt the head of recruitment coming into the football club would have been the best person for the football club. He happened to be somebody who I wanted to bring in. And I was just told that Guy was going to come in, and I didn't agree with it. And I'd never met Guy. I'd never met Guy Branston before. You know, I knew who he was, and you know, and I was told Guy was coming in. And they're game changers. They're decisions that, you know, they put you in a bad place. And although I didn't openly fall out with Guy, the working relationship was disastrous for the football club. It was disastrous. You've got somebody coming in who's solely working for Ray and Jim, solely working for them, and that's it. I'm say how it is. I'm not going to lie to anybody. You know, I've not really done any of these before about my time at Notts, but that's what happened. That's what happened at Notts. You know, somebody came in and who we definitely didn't want to come into the football club.
Where was the youth set up at this point? Was there anyone that you could promote and bring through?
We felt at that moment in time, I mean, we had we had Paul Hart there, you know. Paul was there organising the youth. It was fantastic. It really was. I think we had a couple of players in there. One in particular it was an interesting player, which was Colby Bishop. We had a centre forward.
My son's mate.
Colby came, you know, Colby came, we got him from a real low level non-league team, and he came in and he was just finding his feet, starting to score some goals. We had him in and around the first team once or twice. I mean, he ended up going out of the league and then coming back into Accrington, where he was banging in the goals week in, week out for Aki at the minute. So I wouldn't say at that moment in time that we had a fantastic development group underneath the first team, because we didn't, in my opinion. But Notts County has always had fantastic young players coming through the city, and I wanted to build something on the club, not just the first team, but the structure coming from underneath. And listen, you don't get time to do that, do you? I didn't get that time.
In terms of homegrown at that time that would have been available to you, so it would have been Curtis Thompson, Hayden Hollis would have been in and around.
Yeah, Greg Tempest. Yeah. So we had them around us. It was difficult for them players to get in because they were perhaps just slightly lower than the level. I mean, Hayden had a wonderful moment with us, didn't he? You know, he was pivotal scoring the goals that he did. And you talk about big players like Alan Sheehan's, and I mean the goals that Hayden scored were so important for us. But Curtis was a great young player for us. He really was. I loved Curtis. I thought Curtis was a stereotypical Nottingham boy. He just got it. He got the football club. He got the city.
Yeah. Another young lad. You know, we digress a little bit, but Harris Sunday team played against him. He scored something like about 52 goals in about 14 games, right, for his Sunday morning team. Romello Nangle. Remember Romello?
I do,
Lots of talent, but, you know.
Loads of talent. Yeah, and unfortunately for Romello, he had difficulties. He had difficulties away from the club, and it was a shame because he had individual brilliance. He really did, and quite sad, really, what happens, not just to Romello, but players like that. You know, not just at Notts County, but everywhere around football. You get a load of them players, Paul. And it was difficult, it was difficult to say goodbye to somebody like that. But we had to make the calls, you've got to make big calls. And that's what being a manager is all about.
You're no longer Notts manager. How did that affect you? How did you take that? How did you absorb that over the coming weeks and months?
I felt grieved. I felt upset. I did. I felt aggrieved and upset. But I also felt proud of the time spent up at Meadow Lane. Proud to represent the football club in the way that I feel it should always be represented by. I always tried to be honest with everybody up at the club. The weeks afterwards, I missed it. I really wanted to take this club into them last 9 games because I felt that we could have had the same outcome as the year before. I never ever believed that we'd get relegated, even when some of the performances were poor and the results were poor. I just felt within us we had a run of games where we could get the results and get us out of it. But look, that was never to be, and unfortunately, we got relegated, and Notts went into League Two, and it was sad. I look at it as, I just thought it was sad. I thought it was sad. We'd worked so hard on trying to restructure the group, create this environment where they felt like there was a togetherness again within the community and the football club and the people that worked in there. And we knew it was going to be a difficult year. And the year itself was more difficult than people know. It was such a difficult year. The year before, The Great Escape was an exciting year, wasn't it? It was a wonderful story. The next year, the one where I got sacked in, was a difficult year. And I missed football. I was out the game for 6 months. But what I'd also missed was my family. My family had played a definite second fiddle to Nottingham and Notts County and me being a manager. So when I did come back down to London and, after I did get sacked on that Monday morning, I spent time with the kids and with my wife. And that's the good thing about, about getting sacked, I suppose, is that you get some time back.
One of the things historically through Notts' more recent history since Derek Pavis left, so many eras are marked by false economies that end up costing owners and chairmen, because there's no disputing. Cost Ray a lot of money. It undoubtedly, whatever you think about him, and I was on the board for a short period of time, it cost Alan Hardy a lot of money. But the argument against that is some of the decisions that they make themselves are the ones that cost them the money. So that having dispensed with your services there's a complete flip into a continental approach where there's another 15, 16, 17 players coming in. Now, by the time you've played all the bits and pieces and the add-ons, maybe the basics are lower or whatever, but it's costing you a lot of money. It's costing you an awful lot of money.
Yeah. And that's why, that, without going into the finer details of that second season, if you look at the players and people will say, well, Shaun, why did you bring so many players into the football club? And, you know, it's an absolute, it's a question that needed answering. We brought so many players into the football club because so many players got taken away from the football club at the same time.
Yeah.
And if you look at the terms of the contract, I think there was only 3 players that signed more than a 1-year deal. We knew that all them players were going to be on 1-year deals to take us into that next phase of that third season where we would have a free budget, and the budget wouldn't be hampered by the higher earners or by the amount of players that we had on the books. It would be a budget that would be consistent with a squad of 22 players that would all be earning good League One money. And that's where, would you question a lack of bravery? Everybody's got their own opinion, haven't they, Paul?
But I still get back to the point, if you've already got a core of players who are not injury prone, that play games, that are leaders, pivotal, keep them first. Fill in the gaps on the outside, build around those. Don't rip a heart out and say, oh, well, we're going to put a new leg on. Because if the heart ain't beating, the other bits ain't going to work.
Yeah. And that's why that moment over that, after the Oldham game, you know, that was why it was such a big decision of whether to stay or go. And like I say, 8 years later, I'd probably make a different decision. But at the time, just the lure of Notts County and Nottingham and the football club and history and memories keeps you there.
It is a very, very interesting dilemma because, and I'm sure you must have gone over this so many times. Do you think if you had called their bluff and said, if I can't re-sign these players, I'm going to quit and I'm going to go public, do you think you could have won that argument, or do you think the die was cast?
I don't think I'd have won that argument, Paul. I don't.
Really?
I really don't. I don't, because we've all got egos, you know. Some are bigger than others. You
were in a position of strength.
I was, of course, and I knew I had the public support as well at that moment in time, and that's key as being a football manager. When that wanes, obviously you've got difficult moments around the corner, but at that moment in time, it was a very, very strong position. But I knew the people. I knew the people I was working for.
Interesting, right? This has been absolutely brilliant, right? But it's been fascinatingly insightful. It's been a bit heavy and all, but that's all right, because it can. Hopefully, this is a bit of a cathartic exercise for you as well, because you're a Notts lad. You know that overhyped phrase, "one of our own." Hey, you are. Let's make it a bit more light-hearted.
Absolutely.
Tell me about Bajner.
Wow. Wow.
and the Orient game. How did you end up with him?
It was again, you know, like your phone rings and you go, who's this? This is a number that I've got no idea who it's from. It's not an English number, so you take it, and then this centre forward is available, Bajner. So we do a research, and you know, we pick up the phone of where he's been and
Borussia Dortmund.
This is what I mean, you know, he's been there and then he ends up, you know, on our shores, and then right, we need a number 9 who can hold the ball up, because we play that type of way. And then we end up down at Orient, and there's so many fans in the corner, and there's banners of Bajner, and he goes and scores.
What did you think of him?
I liked him. I thought he was as a lad, he was unbelievable. Great lad, fantastic. He was a weirdo, but he was a good lad.
Why was he a weirdo?
just because, you know, he was, people call him weird, people call different people weirdos because they're not English. And listen, it was different. He had a different way of approaching his game, slightly different to what the lads were. But he'd done things in training, Paul, where you thought, nobody else can do that. And it stuck, and he could play off him, and he scored a goal in training. And it was a gamble. You know, when you're talking about that heavy stuff, what I've just been into then, they're the kind of players that you're going for, mate.
I can say, so Orient, it was a midweek game, wasn't it? And I think that when we'd signed him, there's been that on Facebook, I think the club had to shut down Facebook because for whatever reason, he was some cult hero in Hungary. And there was talk all the Hungarians that lived in London were all going to come out midweek game at Orient. So I've been at some meeting with Vauxhall, who I manage their sponsorship of England. So I've got my suit on. I couldn't get changed. So I've got best suit on, got on the tube, got off at Leytonstone or whatever it's called. And I walked down and there's just hundreds of Hungarians.
Unbelievable.
All with the flags and then rack. And I go into the pub, quick drink beforehand. It is rammed out with Hungarians. And it's like you're at bloody Wembley. It is just, everyone's going off. They're all battered. They've got all these shirts and everything. And so they all steam down into that. You were on the far side, weren't you? You were in this little sort of low-level bit on the far side to where you were. And the racket, it was the largest noise I'd heard in years at a football game. Absolutely mental. Clearly no interest in Notts County, just balanced. And then he scored, didn't he? And then he ran over, and it might have been the end of the game. He ran over, did he, and gave his shirt away, took his shorts off, didn't he? Put his shorts in the crowd, and they're all trying to grab hold of this. And off he disappears in his flipping underpants at the end of the game.
Oh, unbelievable. I mean, when he scored, me and Greg were laughing so hard. You know, when you just think, this is surreal. This is just the most surreal moment we've had. But Bajner scoring in front of it was like a Hungarian national game, wasn't it? I mean, they might have Notts fans in the corner, and then you've got this big section of Hungarians. It was bizarre. Yeah, I forgot about that. About that stuff.
Come on, tell us some other funny moments while you were at Notts.
Listen, many funny ones. I mean, we used to train up in Arnold Town, and as you know, whilst you're up there, you know the weather can change in an absolute instant.
It's windy up there, isn't it? It's windy up there. It whips in.
Unbelievable. Well, one particular day, the snow came, and it came down, and the lads, you know what soft players are like, they didn't want to go out in it. But Greg stripped just down to his jockeys one day and done the whole of the training session just in his underwear and his Adidas World Cups. It was the funniest session I think I've seen. You know, like Greg, you know what Greg's like. Greg's just, he's not wired up right, is he? And it was them kind of moments. I mean, it was the midfielder, and again another. My names with some of the lads are terrible. The young one we got from Carlisle, Greg knew him.
Liam Noble.
Liam
Noble.
Nobes. Because Nobes used to do the cooking for the lads in the morning.
Hey?
So we was at Arnold Town, and we had food to you could call it food. We only really had food after training, so he would cook breakfast for the lads in just his apron. Nobes. So like the lads would come in the morning. There'd be a dartboard there and a table tennis, and Paul would be there because it's a community training ground, and he'd go and he'd cook the lads breakfast in the morning. Again, naked. Nobes would be naked, just with this apron on, cooking. It was just we had the funniest time. We really did. We had the funniest moments. I mean, so many. Nights out with the staff was great. You know, not too many, of course, but whenever we had the opportunity, we'd have a good time with the players. You know, the Christmas party for the lads was a great Christmas party for them. Players love a Christmas party. And I remember I said to Greg, I'm going to get them in the next day, because I love hearing the stories. You know, just see what's been going off. But the performance, the performance of the next training session, I don't think I've ever seen a group of players as drunk, you know, and they couldn't even kick the ball that next day. You know, just good stories, good memories, loads and loads of them, Paul, loads of them.
And he was an interesting character and unbelievable talent. I think you got him. The Derry Pelly, McCourt, Paddy McCourt.
Paddy McCourt. What a player he was.
Yeah.
I mean, he was. I mean, if only he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Do you know what happened? I think it was Crawley. And you know when you do your team sheet before the game, and you've got to put the numbers next to the player. Paddy was on the bench, and we knew he could only play half an hour because he'd been struggling with his hamstring in a week. But I knew that for the last half an hour, he's definitely coming on. And what had happened was, and I won't name the name because the person who done it wrong was devastated. It really was. But they put the number wrong next to his name when they handed the sheet in to the referee. So when he came on for the last half an hour, he had the number of his playing shirt, but it didn't match the referee's, the fourth official's team sheet. And it wasn't allowed to go on.
I remember this vaguely now.
Yeah. And so he wasn't allowed to go on, and the game had really opened up for Paddy to go on and hopefully do his magic. But we couldn't get him on the pitch because the number had been wrote down differently. Little things like that, you know, like when you think this is going a little bit wrong here. You know, we're losing and we've got a match winner on the side and we can't get him on. But Paddy was a good.
Phenomenal ability, didn't he? But clearly there were the challenges for him. But I mean, it just, you know.
Yeah, brilliant, absolutely brilliant, fantastic, great player, great person. You know, character was unbelievable, and he loved Nottingham, loved it. Probably loved it a little bit too much at times, but it was a great lad.
Did Roy Carroll, great keeper, great servant for Notts, did he do one of them? Because were you manager at Cambridge when he kicked the ball against the player and it went in?
Yeah, done it twice.
That was yeah.
Yeah, done it twice against Luke Berry at Meadow Lane and at Cambridge. Yeah, I mean, them games coming back to manage against Notts County for Cambridge, you know, obviously we had good results against Notts.
You did.
Which was great because you want to come back and, you know, you want to win, don't you? And the reception, you know, that I got from the Notts fans as a Cambridge United manager was brilliant. Again, moments that I'll live with you for a long time.
Spoke a bit about Greg. Greg's back again, number 2, to Neil. What will Greg bring to help Neil this season? Well,
he knows the levels. He knows, you know, the conference, Leagues 1 and Leagues 2 like the back of his hand. So his knowledge of the leagues and of the players and of the systems of the opposition. But what he'll also bring for the manager will be that support mechanism. And of course, you know, for him to lose Neil Cox was a big loss.
Yeah,
because that's his pal and his confidence.
Been together a long time. A long
time. And when Greg told me that he was going to go into Notts County, because he gave us a call, which he shouldn't have done really, silly, but he gave us a call and said to us like, "Would I be all right with it?" I said, "What? You get yourself back to Notts. It's a great club, and you know they've missed you. You know they've missed that kind of character, and that's what he brings. He brings character to the training group, to the management, to the coaching team, and he knows his stuff. He was a brilliant number 2 for me, and we wouldn't have survived in that first year without Greg. That's for sure."
We've got about 30 questions, and about 11 of them all ask the same thing. Do you think your chapter, your book with Notts County is finished, or do you think possibly in the future at some point there might be an opportunity to come back to the club, or are you done with it now? You know, you've got it out your system. You've managed the club. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, God, it's a tough question. I loved it. I loved it at Notts. Loved every single moment. Even the tough moments were you know, they were brilliant for me. Looking back now, I always see myself as a football manager now. You know, I do. I'm working with the young players at Crystal Palace, and you know, I'm working in development football at this moment in time. But do I see myself ultimately going back into senior football? I do, at the right time. I'm learning more now. I wish I'd have had this skill set that I've got now taking me into Notts County, because I think that would have helped me as well. But I do believe that that's the path that I'd like to take again, you know, if given the opportunity. And would I work at Notts County again? Of course I would. You know, it's a wonderful football club. It's one that means the world to me. I think they've got a great manager there. I think Neil's a very, very good manager. I really do. I think, you know, this is the moment for Notts to go full circle and get promoted out of the conference this year. I think they'll do it. I hope they do it. Of course I do. And I think they'll kick on again with Neil. I think is a really, really good manager. And so I can't see any kind of return too soon, because I think there's going to be a really large, successful period coming around the corner.
Well said. As a fan, what did you think when you saw the club were relegated?
I was devastated. I was angry. I was devastated and angry at the same time. To be the size of Notts County in the conference is disappointing. But there's some big teams in the conference, and you know, there's many other fans that have shared the same, you know, low moments of what Notts fans have over recent years. But the cream always rises. It always does. And it won't be for long, Paul. It won't be for long. I can get that. It won't be for long.
On that note, it's a very positive note, and I sincerely hope you are right. As we've done this podcast, probably the best performance for a long time, Notts put up again on, I think it was Friday night against Wealdstone. So I think it is difficult as a Notts fan at the minute. The challenge, I think, for the club is, and you would know this, historically Notts are better at proving people wrong than proving people right. Small club against the odds, you know, getting the promotions, all the rest of it. We're the big fish in the little pool at the minute. We're the big fish, you know, and everyone does this, you know. Jose Mourinho's got God knows how much money and talent at Tottenham. And, you know, the good top says, oh, we're the pony in the race. We're not serious content. No, who's he kidding? But everybody does this to create this siege mentality. And I think it's hard for Notts at the minute to kind of get that siege mentality because we are the huge fish. And you're quite right. There's a lot of teams, Paul Cox, who we've had as a guest on the podcast, you know, he talks about the National League being a graveyard, you know, Wrexham, you know, Stockport, Torquay. It's tough because so many of those other clubs, it becomes such a huge game for us. And I think you hope that Notts' strong budget, on the face of it, better players over the course of a season will shine up.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Paul's made a good point there. It's a difficult league to get out of, and obviously there have only been 2 teams coming out of the league
numerically.
Yeah, it makes it even more challenging. I'd like to see 3 come out of the conference and 3 come out of League 2. I mean, I don't think you'll ever get chairman vote on that because
turkeys and Christmas.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But it would be brilliant to see that 3rd team come up, and it would make it a little bit more interesting in Leagues 2 and in the conference, but for the amount of turnover of teams. But you're right, you know, the expectation's always going to be on Notts County every week. It's when I played at Leeds United, when we played anybody at Ellen Road, everyone's levels, wrongly, but they rose by 10-15%. Because they wanted to beat Leeds at Ellen Road. And it's just the same when they play Notts County at Meadow Lane. It's their cup final. And it's a saying And it won't go away until they come out of that league and go into League One as well.
Absolutely. Absolute pleasure.
Sorry it was heavy at
very
times, Paul. Sorry
yeah.
it was heavy, mate, but look, we got there in the end.
No. And I hope, hope for you it's, unburden yourself a little bit and all the rest of it. You're among friends here with all of us a lot. So I don't think I'll be in the libel courts just yet. So that's good as well. So as I say, there's a phrase that's often used, one of our own. It is absolutely written for you for Notts County. We wish you all the very, very best in the future. Thank you for being so honest, candid, revealing, and a lot of those things you've spoken about explains an awful lot about the second season. We all knew what an unbelievable turnaround that you performed in the first season, and of course as a player and as a fan, that legacy is cemented for all time. So thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks very much.
Top man.